Very good evening, everyone. Am I audible to all delegates? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
A very good evening, everyone. So, as per schedule, today's session is on components of result writing. And it is my great privilege to introduce the resource person for today's live session, Professor Hitesh Khurana, sir, a distinguished figure in the field of psychiatry with an illustrious career spanning over 18 years. Sir is a true luminary in the realm of mental health. Sir holds the esteemed position of professor in the psychiatry at PGIMS Rohtak, where he also serves as the in charge of geriatric services. His contribution to the field of geriatric mental health have been particularly noteworthy, marked him his postdoctoral fellowship in this specialized area. With an MD in psychiatry, Professor Khurana sir has honed his expertise in the intricacies of mental health, a testament to his dedication to the well-being of individuals. Additionally, he has played a pivotal role in postgraduate teaching in psychiatry at his institution, shaping the next generation of mental health professionals. Sir's academic progress is underscored by the remarkable list of achievements. He boasts an impressive tally of 30 publications indicative of his deep-seated commitment to advancing knowledge in the field. His contributions have not gone unnoticed, as evidenced by accolades such as the Best Resident Award and the Prestige in Test Award in 2016. In the realm of academic publishing, Dr. Hitesh Khurana sir served as an associate editor in the Frontiers in Psychiatry, Psychotherapies, a role that underscores his standing as a thought leader in the field. Additionally, he holds the position of deputy editor at the Indian Journal of Social Psychiatry, further solidifying his influence in the academic community. Professor Khurana sir's expertise also extends to the realm of statistical analysis, where he served as an statistical associate for the Indian Journal of Psychiatry. Furthermore, he plays a critical role as a reviewer for esteemed journals, including PLOS and one and several other PubMed index journals, specializing in mental health. His multidimensional contributions have significantly enriched this field of psychiatry and biostatistics, and his dedication to advancing mental health research is truly commendable. We are honored to have Sir in this 3 months program with us today to deliver the session on the component of result writing. I invite you to all to join me in welcoming him. Please, sir, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Ahmed, sir, for giving me this opportunity. May I share my slides?
Yes, please, sir. Please, sir.
At the outset, I am thankful to Ahmed, sir, for speaking such a nice words for me. I am also thankful to the Institute of Applied Statistics and the Institute of Training and Research in Ayurveda who are sponsoring this particular course in the research methodology. And I'm also thankful to all those faculty members and the delegates who are presenting over here um, uh, uh, for listening to me. I wish you all a very happy Yoga Day. This is the day when we can say that on the we are able to propagate our Indian culture all over the world, and we are quite successful in that. That yoga is now very popular in almost all countries, and many countries are even performing better than what we are doing over here. And thankful to the government of India for taking such initiatives to propagate this particular tradition all over the world. And when we come to the research writing, of course, I feel by now you are familiar with the earlier topics like introduction and material method, aims and objectives. And now today we'll be talking about research writing, about the components of results writing. And I'll try to be in brief and I won't be taking much time on it. So this is, of course, a small topic, but it is an important one, and I would highlighting the important points only, such as what is the importance of writing research results, and how the results need to be organized so that a person is reading this with great interest and can understand it, and what are the different kinds of techniques for presentation of results, and how to choose a particular technique. I'll be telling something about that too, and description of some of the presentation techniques which are often required in the result writing, and which I feel, because you all are familiar with the one or the other aspects of research, and many of you would have written theses and must have published some papers also. So I don't think it would be difficult for you to understand this particular topic which I am going to present today. But nevertheless, if you have any kind of questions, please feel free to raise your hand and ask for your doubts. First of all, going for the what is the importance of research, the topic of this result writing, and till now in a paper, whether it is thesis or whether it is a paper or you are writing any other kind of scientific article, you had been writing all about the previous research, and on the basis of that, you were deriving some ideas which you wrote in the aims and the objective and the research questions. And method also, you have planned something on the basis of the previous research only. What were the lacunae in the method, and what were the lacunae in the knowledge, and those made a part, or those made the backbone of your methodology. Now you have used the methodology to write something by your own, which is the results. And just as everywhere it has been highlighted that when you're writing a research article, or whether it is thesis, or whether it is a dissertation, or it is your research publication, you need to be concise, you need to be clear, comprehensive, and you need to present everything in each and every aspect. It should be complete so that it doesn't appear to have any kind of gaps in it. It is different from the creative writing, where you write many kinds of the flowery kind of language, but here your language needs to be very simple so that even a common person can understand, except for the some kind of technical words. Okay, of course, we cannot have anything other than, if we want to write Ayurveda, or we cannot have anything other than if we want to write microbiology and cancer. But we have to write those technical terms in the technical form only. And all observations, whatever we have done or through our experimentation or our observation, those all need to be put here in the text in the result section. And this is very important, because whatever we will writing in the results, only that thing would be carried forward in the discussion. And in the discussion, we cannot afford to say that, okay, this is something which we have not mentioned in the results, but this is also we have found it. And if it is such thing is there, then again, this gives an opportunity that we should revise our results. And especially when you are writing paper, uh, there is always a limit suggested to you that, okay, please write your paper in 3000 or 500, 5000 words, and like that. And in these kinds of restraints on us, when we are writing the results, we have to be restrained. And so here the presentation skills into play, that we have to present in the way that in the smallest space or in the smallest number of words, we can express the maximum amount of the information. And for that, the different art journals give their guidelines, and we have to be familiar with those guidelines. Uh, some journals give very simple and very small guidelines, as we can see over here in the Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine. And it says that the result should be clear and concise. It would be highlighted everywhere. And this is really a very broad kind of guideline, whether we have to have any kind of figures or whether we can have our tables. It is not given in, but even then, we have to be careful that we have to keep into consideration that what space limitations are proposed in this particular manuscript which we are planning to write. Other journals may be somewhat uh, further more narrow. They will be specifying it. Yes, okay, if you have any figures or the tables, illustrate, but keep it to the minimum, as this particular journal is telling. And many times they also give us a detailed kind of description that if we have to give any kind of figures, how these figures should be, and whether there is any kind of charges or not, they will be also telling to us about that. Whenever we are start writing any article, whether it is for journal or whether it is for thesis, let's be careful that we have to be familiar with the guidelines which have been proposed to us. If this is a thesis, then we have to be familiar with the guidelines which have been proposed by our university, that what should be the format and what should be the sequence and how the tables need to be presented and how the different results and the discussion is to be presented. Everything we have to be familiar with it. With that. Keep At the end, we cannot afford to say, okay, we were not familiar with these particular guidelines. And so because of our ignorance, please accept our article or the journal. We are not in the position to make any kind of pleading after we have submitted an article ignoring the guidelines. Many times the editors are so strict that once they see that the article is not as per the format, it is not read, it is just returned. And we need to be careful of the same thing while writing results also. When we are writing results, of course, results, we can make a sort of a hypothetical classification only. That what can be the different sections of the results in which we have to put our things, our observations. And this is a brief kind of classification where we can, how we can organize our results. First of all, we can have a journal section in which and then we can have the main results which are related with our objectives, and then we may have some kind of additional findings. Those may also be given even if these are not the part of our aims and objectives. But here, while writing about the explanatory or the additional results, we need to be a bit judgmental whether we need to write these or and, we can afford to ignore it, because we have space or we have word restriction with us. We cannot play with that at all. And what should be the limitation or what should be the limit of writing results? That is again a very vague kind of, for this there is only a vague kind of description only, that in case we are exceeding 1/3 of the total word count, then I think we are writing too much. But we can always depend that if our introduction section is small and our discussion section is small, we can of course expand the result section. And when we have to expand our result section, it is advisable that let's expand the main results, make everything clear about that, because this is dealing with the aims and objectives, and explanatory results, so that our results are clearly comprehended by the readers, so that there is no ambiguity is presented or the ambiguity is reflected. In those kinds of situations, the explanatory results may also be added to it. In the journal section, what we write, of course, journal section is something very completely general, and it does not relate with the objectives as such, but it relates with our research methodology, data collection methods, and any kind of deviation if we had to make in that. The general aspects of the data we can have, that where with the results, where the study has been correct, has been where we have carried out this particular study, whether our sample is representative of the population where the study has been carried out. All these things we need to mentioned in that particular part only. And how the results are sequenced. Most of the times it is always required that the way or in the sequence you have written your objectives, in the same sequence we should present our results also, so that matching is very easy. Especially it is required when we are writing our thesis or any dissertation. Sometimes there might be some kind of difficulties we have encountered in the collection of data, and maybe that we have been able to carry the sample size which we had committed in the material method. We have been able to achieve that sample size, or sometimes we have not been able to achieve the sample size. If situations are such, those need to be mentioned, and why these have happened, this also need to be mentioned in the journal section. And on this way, what are the limitations of this particular study? Those would be very clear to the readers right in the beginning, and so they'll be reading it very carefully. And then it is customary that every article or every thesis which you will be seeing is having the socio-demographic or the sample characteristics, and along with their clinical profile. Clinical profile, I would like to mention, I would like to emphasize, because most of the times we are dealing with the clinical research only. And for the other specialties, instead of the clinical profile, it can be the geographical profile or any other kind of profile, depending upon the field of research. And when we are writing this, we have to see how much information we have, and whether it involves a lot of figures, or it is just can be given in the running text. If it is having a lot of uh, numerical figures, it is good to put the things in the form of tables, or in the form of some pie charts, or in the figures. But otherwise, text is also, a running text is also equally good in the part of the journal section. And here again, I would like the journal section is not dealing with the aims and objectives, but it is for the purpose that the reader is able to know the limitation, so that whether the study is having an internal validity, and if it is resembling, the sample is resembling the population, whether it is having an external validity. It will give the reader an idea right before it starts reading our results. So this is the advantage of writing the journal section. And this is one example of the journal section, which where things are mentioned in the form of a table. And here from the table, you can see it very well that you cannot identify what are the aims, objectives of this particular study. It is just presenting to you the different kinds of the very how the sample characteristics between the two groups which they have taken, case A and controls B, how they are differing, and they have given some kind of statistical tests also. Many times the statistical tests are required, and many times these are not required. For these, we always need to see the our own requirements, if it is helping us in explaining our objectives very clearly, of findings related to those, or it is a requirement of the journal or our thesis. In those also we can see. And in the in the next section, the main results. Result is the most important part of our results writing, and it focuses primarily on our objectives which we have framed for the purpose of research. And objectives, as we always divide it, the simplest objectives are kept on the top, and the complex objectives, and many times the complex objectives are also the mixture of the previously stated objectives. Those are mentioned at the lower level, at the third or fourth, and wherever. So in that way, we have to organize our results in the sequence of our objectives only. and no objective is to be ignored. Most of the times the secondary objectives are not really a great focus of any result. If we often feel that if primary objectives are met with, and the result is complete, and indeed many people accept this too. But the secondary objectives, if we have mentioned, it is our duty that for the comprehensiveness and for the completeness of the results, secondary objectives should also be mentioned in the results. And because we have limitation of words, the tables and the diagrams are often required for the purpose of reporting the main objectives. Text is usually not sufficient, and text is really not recommended while writing the main results, because it doesn't give us the complete picture. But when we are seeing the tables and the diagrams, those are easy to read, these are easy to comprehend, we can make meaning out of this. So we should have as many number of the tables and the diagrams which are required, depending upon the limitation uh, 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 put on us by the journal recommendations. And interestingly, the number of words which we use in tables or the diagrams does not count towards the total word count which is recommended for any particular kind of articles. Only the running text, excluding references, that is taken in the word count of any particular uh, journal, or in the thesis also. Tables, diagrams, these are often omitted, and hence writing results is something very easy also for us. And once it is complete, this really tells us that yes, the achieve what the result study was aimed at is really fulfilled. And next, we often require writing some kind of explanatory results. And this particular slide, you can see one example for the main kind of results. Here, this is that from the titles, you can see that what exactly can be the aim. And aim is also highlighted or is stated over here, that in this particular manuscript, the authors were just wish to concentrate upon the consumption of xylose as the only carbon source by one particular strain of bacteria. And here they have mentioned about that only in the this particular table. And you can see that the table is very well organized. Each table is having good number of figures, and it is quite symmetrical. And so one will feel like going to read this particular table. And in this way, we have to organize tables and the figures. And you can always imagine that if all these things we need to write in the words, it will be really very cumbersome. We won't be able to make any kind of comparison very easily. Here we can make a comparison very easily between any two figures which are presented in this particular table. So that is the beauty of the tabular presentation. And it is often, as you will be finding, that this is one of the most common kind of presentation in the research, whether related with thesis or whether it is related with uh, uh, the for the publication results. Explanatory results are not really a requirement of any kind of publication, but these are required when we feel that results are a bit confusing and these need to be clarified. There can be a bias. Supposing we are studying about the autonomic arousal and we are seeing the person's blood pressure and the pulse, and we see that there are many persons who are smokers, and we know that the smoking always increases the autonomic arousal, and similarly caffeine also. And if these are there, we need to make this kind of clarification that so many persons who are taking caffeine are excluded, and the data is for the caffeine and the non-caffeine, or the smokers and the non-smokers, is presented separately for the purpose of clarity. That whether our instruments were proper or not, the sensitivity and the specificity data, if we have tested for that in our particular research, that also need to be presented so that the person may know that okay, what is the scientific rigor which we have used, and what is the level of accuracy of the results on the basis of the tools which we have used. And many times our distributions are also not normal. There may be too many outliers, and the outlier analysis is sometimes separately required. And sometimes we have the dropouts, and if the dropouts are also having a particular kind of sequence or the particular kind of pattern, this also needs to be brought out very clearly over the in the research. Otherwise, the outliers jeopardize the whole condition of the research, and we cannot really make out, and we cannot make the study internally as well as externally valid if we have too many number of outliers. And sometimes if we have, again, the information is very small, give it in the form of text. But otherwise, if you have to make a comparison, you're telling about the smoker versus non-smokers or the caffeine user versus non-caffeine users, then it is always good to give it in the form of tables where you can show the statistical comparison also. Once the discrepancies in the explanatory results are clear, the person will be more at ease while interpreting for the meaning of the results which we have given in the main section of the results. And so here you can see that here the authors wish to study the psychometric properties of one particular scale over here. After studying the psychometric properties, they have also made a comparison with the other one particular tool which they have named as DSQ-40, and they have studied this as the gold standard, again showing that the tool had the validity or the had the resemblance with the other given tools also, so that the tool which is there is valid not just because of its psychometric properties, and it is also valid because of its resemblance with the other tools also. And so this is quite helpful when we are giving some kind of extra details also, if it is required in a particular research, or if it is helping us in understanding the results. So if anybody reads this particular table or this particular description, the one can very easily say, yes, okay, this tool is as valid as the tool which is given earlier. So if this tool is smaller or this tool is having some advantages, it is preferable to use this particular tool in comparison with the previous tool with which it has been compared. Uh, and how to prepare result section. For this, I would like to put a sort of questions to you only, that when we should start preparing for writing the result section. Is it at the time when we are submitting a protocol for the research, or it is soon after the protocol is submitted, or soon after the data is collected, or when the data has been analyzed, or when we are preparing the manuscript for the thesis or the paper? Which of these options, one or more options, you can choose any, you feel this is appropriate? Any guesses? Any guesses? Anybody, you can either speak by unmuting yourself, or you can put it in the chat box also. In both way, it is equally good.
After analysis of the data.
After collection of the data, one is saying that at the time of okay, preparing the manuscript, and when the data has been collected. Uh, yes, okay, but you would be surprised about the answer, that the first two options are the correct options. At the time of submission protocol, or soon when the protocol has been approved, this is the right time when we should start preparing for writing research, writing result section. It will look surprising to you, but it is the truth. In case you want to save time, just be alert about it. That Okay, it is not once you know the method of the research, once your protocol has been approved. Now, once the protocol has been approved, of course, this is the right time or the latest at that time we should start writing about the planning. We should start planning about writing the results. It would look surprising to you, but I hope as the discussion goes further, it will be clear to that why is it so. For writing results, I think we need to do some kind of groundwork also. And when we have decided to carry out a research, we know that what kind of variables we are choosing and what kind of output we will be having. That if many variables will be related with the socio-demography and many variables will be required according to our objectives. And we have also, on the basis of objectives, we can also guess that what kind of statistics we have to use. And on the basis of that, we can think that these statistics would look better in the form of our tables or graphs, or these are so minor that giving risk writing and one or the two sentences about it, those would be okay. So in what way it will be economical and in what way it will be aesthetic, on the basis of the combination of these two, we can think of making the tables or the graphs or the text. And when we have completed the protocol, we can make the dummy tables on the basis of this particular scenario. So when we are writing, many times it happens that you are giving a protocol for evaluation, that they will be asking you that what sort of results you are expecting at that time. If you have given the dummy tables, which are just comprising of the titles and the titles of the columns and the rows, and they'll be knowing that what kind of results are expected and how these are going to be presented. And it would be very easy for them to understand whether it is a useful research or not. But they will be really impressed. And many times if we put the person in a positive mood, it makes our unacceptable things also acceptable. This is the human psychology, that if your things are presented well, these are likely to be accepted also very well. And so when you have planned you have written your protocol, you just think that how you are going to have, what kind of tables or the figures you are likely to have. And let's work on this in this particular discussion only. Supposing I have this particular kind of research in which I have these three objectives with me, that I want to study the pattern of the systemic infective diseases among adults, and I want to see the commonly prevalent bacterial infection also among them, and I want to study the antibiotic sensitivity or resistance in the detected bacterial population. And so on the basis of these particular objectives, I can guess that I'll be having some, because it includes adult. So I am not mentioning about it, but of course the age is required to be also to be taken into consideration, because I can have different stratifications. Gender, of course, the males and the females, they may be differently susceptible, and they may be having a different kind of infections. And clinical variables also I have to consider that what can be the microbiological diagnosis on the basis of the infection, not just the systemic infection. I cannot just say that infective hepatitis, but what is the microbiota which is causing this infection, that also need to be known. And what are the other confounding variables which can affect the occurrence or the sensitivity of this particular infection. The person can be anemic or the or the diabetic. If the diabetes is there, the chances of infections are more, and chances of having the resistance are also more. And anemia, non-anemia, This I need to see whether I want to present it as the categorically discrete, or I want to present it as a continuous variable in the form of the amount of hemoglobin which I can uh, detect in a particular person. Tools also I have tools. Most of the times I'll be collecting the some kind of sample. I may be collecting the sample of sputum. I may be collecting the urine sample. I may be collecting the blood sample. And so accordingly, I'll have in a different variety of the specimen which I have to collect. And I'll be subjected to the different kinds of the cultures, and I'll be testing for the sensitivities. And so are there any kind of have I included the variables over there which are required for the purpose of meeting the first objective, second objective, and the third objective? I have to verify that. In case there is anything missing, I have to include that. And in case there is anything which appears to be superfluous, I have to exclude that and accordingly make amendment in the protocol, so that I don't keep on collecting the unnecessary data. Only the data which is required for this particular research is there. Because if we are collecting unnecessary data, it is having its own ethical problems, and we should not enter into any kind of ethical controversy. So, and this kind of information, you need not collect data to make, but you can always anticipate these kinds of the variables. Whenever you are making a master chart, you already know that which variables you are taking. And but only thing is that it's grouping and subgrouping is required. And on the basis of objectives, the outcome variables, the independent variables and the dependent variables, we need to identify, because we'll be using some kind of statistical test between that. In case we want to see the specimen that infection is more detected in the blood cultures or it is in the sputum culture, of course, in that, because it would be in the form of frequency only. And what is the most common kind of disease of organic or the systemic disease I am coming across? This we need to see it in the form of frequency only. So I can guess over here that the chi-square or any kind of Fisher's exacted, any non-parametric test would be the most appropriate. And similarly, on the basis of that, what kind of specimen I have, or what kind of disease, or the glucose levels or the hemoglobin levels, if I am taking as a continuous variable, so as the infective and the infected and the non-infected, I can make a comparison through t-test or through the chi-square test if I take it in the form of continuous or in the form of discrete or the categorical variables. So this is how initial brain work right after we are writing protocol helps us in deciding that how we are going to present our results. So it makes our task easy. So what will happen at the end of research? That will be simply having the tables, or will be simply having the scheme with us, and will be just filling the figures in that. So in this way, it becomes very easy for us at the end of the research, that we are able to save our time by some kind of premonition or the previously done brain work. And how the different techniques are used: we can have the textual presentation, we can have the tabular presentations, or we can have the graphical or the pictorial presentations most of the times. And these are the most commonly seen presentations in any kind of research which we will be carrying out, whether it is irrespective of the disease. So this is an example of dummy textual presentation. I was just highlighting that we should have some kind of dummy. And if I have to make the dummy textual presentation for the general aspects of the results, how many participants I'll be having, and what is the gender distribution of that, what the age, mean SD, educational status, residence, I can make a straight paragraph about that, or I need to make a table about that. I can mention about that, make about that. And data which I have collected, how I have processed the data before any kind of taking any kind of analysis. I can mention about that also, that how the data was cleaned, whether there were any kind of repeat observations or whether there were any kind of missing observations. And those also I have excluded, or I have included those also, and I have performed any kind of appropriate statistics. Those can be mentioned over here. And if any kind of sample has been excluded because of its properties not exactly fitting, because of its being outlier, just the age is just too much, I am collecting the data of about on the adult, but somehow it has happened that my sample has been restricted between 30 to 40 years of age, and some person who is the age to 55, 56, though adult, but it is also there, but it is making some kind of confounding in the result, that because it is increasing the mean age, or it is also increasing the standard deviation, so the results are likely to get impacted. So those are excluded. Those kinds of things we need to understand first. And when we are making the textual presentation, or we can think beforehand, and we can have a plan about the presentation of those right before we have collected the. This is a kind of the dummy table which you can make even before collecting the data. The different specimens you are having, and how the specimens can get divided in the males and the females. Okay, whether they, on the basis of their positivity, and how you can make a sort of comparison, a statistical comparison of that. Okay, here in this you can say that I have put everything in the table except the cell values. That cell values I will be getting once I have the data with me, and once the data is analyzed, and it will just make a just I'll be making putting the figures very quickly in that, and it will give me the completely formed table. In the same way, I can plan about the dummy figures also. If somewhere I have to give some kind of microscopic picture of some bacteria, or I have to give the appearance of some kind of geographical area, that what kind of vegetation are there, and what kind of fauna and flora is there, I can give that, and it will give a very clear kind of picture instead of describing those in the text. Simple frequencies are there, and I can give it in the form of pie charts, or I can give a comparison in the form of bar diagram, or any kind of appropriate diagram. Here, when I am making the dummy figures, I need not really go for making the dummy figures. I just need to mention that here I will be presenting it in the form of this particular figure, whether it is going to be a pie chart or bar diagrams or whatever, so that when data is in front of us, we are just doing that particular work, and we are over within a very short time. Textual presentations, when we go, I'll be now telling you about in the details, some details about the each and every kind of presentation. I have just about 15 minutes. I'll take 10 minutes more. This is the most common kind of presentation. Text is always there in the results, and text needs to be combined with the any figures or the tables if it is referring to. And if we are carrying out a qualitative research, in the qualitative research, it is indispensable, because most of the data is also in the form of the text, and its description is also in the form of the text. So in the qualitative kind of research, you will be finding that the textual representation is dominant. And those who are working in the linguistics, on the language, or in history, they'll be seeing that this is the most common kind of the data analysis which is presented. But in the natural sciences like biology, physics, this needs to be supplemented with the figures and the tables in order to space our time. So its advantages are it is easy to write and anybody can write if we know the voice typing, or we can type by ourselves, and can be used for the results for the general text. And if we are writing for the main text also, it can be used as the stand-alone method also. But we have to see that it is the word or the space consuming method. So we have to use this with caution. Disadvantage, and in case the words are difficult to make a clear picture in our mind. So whenever this kind of thing is there, when we are having too many numerical figures, this is not really a good method. We should always present in the form of tables or the figures. Textual presentation, how you should be there, that in case we are writing the big sentences, it will again make very difficult to read. Direct language is always preferred, and past tense is required because we have already done it. And mixture of active and the passive voice, this we should prefer to avoid the monotony. And once we have done it, reread and rephrase it. And nowadays, it is the time of artificial intelligence. Many people are using Chat GPT and the other artificial intelligence software for writing their text. And of course, we cannot say that this should not be used, but this should be used properly with the human supervision. That once you have written your text, give it to the artificial intelligence, please rephrase it for me, instead of using the directly as the first thing to do. That first we are giving it in the artificial intelligence, and then we are thinking, yes, this is perfect, and we are giving it like that. Okay, that will really be an unfair thing to do. And uh, uh, just what artificial intelligence or the rephrasing will do, that in case we have some small long sentences, it will really, rephrasing would always help in reducing the word count. That case here you can see that these are the few examples that the result would seem to indicate is something which is giving us a vague idea. That we have to be very specific in the results. We cannot afford to be vague over here. These are our observations. We have data, and so we can clearly speak about that data. Instead of would seem, we can say that it is uh, these indicates. And if we are having some kind of doubt, then again we have simple words for that. And many times we are in the habit of writing that when the two groups are having figures are differing, we'll see that this group had slightly higher number than this particular group. But it is unscientific, and we need to rephrase that the statistical difference is not there in those, although there is a difference. And if we are using artificial intelligence, it is always good to acknowledge it in the acknowledgement part, that this particular tool or this particular software was used for the purpose of writing or purpose of rephrasing this particular article, and nobody would be objecting to it. But if it is detected that the artificial intelligence was used and it is not acknowledged or referred, then it might be considered equivalent to plagiarism, and your paper may be rejected, or it may lead to the some kind of problems, and the paper might be even required to be retracted. And recently it it has happened also, as I saw it on the retraction watch. And so whenever we are using artificial intelligence, let's be very honest about it, and we need not worry about using. And this is one a classical textual presentation. Can you really read it as fast as it is possible? I'll just hold it for 15 seconds. I hope by this time you have read it. And Now just keep thinking about it, or whether you, if you want to think and not do not want to think about this, it is also okay. But this is the info, some info message I had to convey through this. Tabular presentations are better whenever we are having some kind of numerical data, as you had seen in the previous text also, and always link it to the tabular presentations need to be linked in the text by giving the table number, as you had seen in the previous text that the table number 2 was written. And advantages and the disadvantages, you will be seeing it very soon. And standalone, we do not repeat the things which are written in the table in the same way as it is as it is in the table, but we just mention in the text that this particular difference was found significant. You can refer to the table number, and this particular difference was not significant. We need not give a detailed presentation as we had given in the text. Text need not be converted into the complete word chart or the word description. Just we have to highlight the important things in the tabular presentation. Here, can you really make out some kind of meaning out of it? Okay, how is the male female distribution, and how is the mean estimate of age, minimum, maximum? And you would be surprised to see that this the tabular description is the same kind of description which you have read in the text earlier, which I asked you to go through. And here you can make a comparison which is easier to read. And the answer is very clear, and it can be supplemented with this particular kind of table also, because they have given here the competent conditions were assessed, the septic shock, sepsis, etc. And here also you can see that the authors have restricted themselves in making the presentation of the figures, and the figures are presented in this particular table. So there are definitely uh, uh, non-controversial advantages of writing tables. Graphical presentations are important when we are making some sort of presentation instead of in the text, or when we are sending it for the publications, because in those we have a very little time, and we want to we want to make a quick impression. So whenever we see that time would be very short, at that time, instead of the tables also, it would be good to give the figures, and the figures we can supplement with the different kinds of and data, and in this way the figures will become more informative in comparison with the running text or with the table. So disadvantages, of course, it is there that it is, these are a bit difficult to draw if we have to draw it through the manual artwork, and which is the most appropriate kind of figure we want to choose. We can give it very easily. Precision loss, it would be there in case that, because it won't be giving us the clear figure, clear digits, or the numerical figures won't be there, and we'll be just mentioning about this particular difference was statistically significant. Now we'll be at loss key, how much significance and was there, and what it was the actual difference. We won't be knowing over that. But in the when we are making a presentation, we do not have this much of time to go for the numerical figures. Giving that just an impression would be sufficient. Now, if we have to describe this particular figure, and we want to describe what kind of birds are there, and what kind of environment they prefer, this figure will be giving us a very clear kind of idea, instead of writing a word chart over there. But it is really very difficult, and we need to have a camera, and we need to have a good quality printer to make this kind of photograph, and we can always highlight what we need to focus upon, and it is giving the complete picture. And you can see that what we want to highlight, it is giving us a much better information in comparison with the tables or in the text, which we can say, and we can remember also very easily what is in the table. So this is in summary when to use text and when to use tables and the figures. and all these slides will be with you for the purpose of your revisions or for the purpose of your memory. And making tables of the results. It is again, okay, we want to fill now dummy tables we have already done, and now we want to fill figures in it. We are simply filling figures, and we need to be careful that each table is having a table number. It has a title also, and its columns are also properly titled, and row heading is also given, and we have the column headings if required. Those are also we have mentioned so that there is no ambiguity or lack of clarity in that. And we have the row subheadings also, and all these things need to be there, and which make a complete table to us. And we need to be careful that we should not leave any kind of cell blank in it. If there is any kind of blank cell is there, it is always good to blacken or color it so that we are able to convey this particular impression that it is not by mistake, it is deliberate. And here, when we are putting the figures in the tables, we need to be careful that we need to have the uniformity about that. Okay, now the blood glucose level in males, it is shown the mycobacterium. Those who were suffering from mycobacterium had 12.34 milligram per deciliter. But those who are suffering from the pneumocystic carinii had the 14.567. Why discrepancy in the number of significant figures after decimal? Keep this uniform. And it is always recommended that if you are having just two figures before the decimal, just the two figures after a decimal are sufficient. In case you have more figures before decimal, then just having one figure after a decimal is sufficient. And similarly for statistics also, you can see that 12.5 and 8.767, this appears a bit unusual, that I am giving more emphasis on the pneumocystic carinii and less emphasis on mycobacterium, and it should also not be there. Emphasis should be equal. Again, they should be reduced to the same number of significant digits after the decimal. And similarly for the p-value also, the p-value we need to have exact. And if p-value is really very small, just putting one after the two decimal, two zeros after the decimal is sufficient. So 0.034 is okay, instead of mentioning that 0.001, 0.00001. And this figure, which is shown on the top of the p-value, this can all mentioned as the 0.001 also. It will convey the same kind of meaning instead of making any kind of difference. Graphical representations, of course, as described, these are conveying the uh, good results, good method, but we need to choose what kind of graphical figures are there. If we are showing a process or we are showing some kind of chronological sequence, flow chart, fishbone, these are there, or the consort diagrams are always required, and we'll be just covering through the, I think you are familiar with all these kinds of things. We'll be just covering it in a very brief manner. So flow charts can be in the form of fishbone diagrams or in the form of some timelines. As we can see that this is a fishbone diagram that first of all, if HAN project is there, health and net project is there, that what are the policies are there, and what are the procedures for the data collection are there, and what technology is used for, and ultimately what kind of problems and how the difficulty in HAN was highlighted. And so we can, in the chronological order or the temporal sequence, we can give, and we can give the different parts of the procedures also, how the different parts of the procedures have affected the outcome. This can be given very easily in the fishbone form of diagrams. Flow diagrams can also be given in case there is some kind of timelines or the one process follows the other, and IBR approval and then carrying out research This is in the form of flow diagrams. Some procedure is being fulfilled. If this is being full condition is being fulfilled, then what to be done, and if the condition is not fulfilled, then what to be done. This can be shown in the form of the flow diagram. And consolidated standard observations for the observational trials console diagrams. This is often asked, and these are often recommended to be presented, how the patients were selected and how the patients were included or the excluded. So this is also one of the requirements. Qualitative data, which is dealing with the form of the frequencies only. If we have lesser number of categories, pie chart is always good. Just sum up what we have, and then on the basis of the fraction decide what would be the area of arc. On the basis of that we can make a pie chart, but we need not make and so many calculations in the modern time, because we have the softwares to make calculation. Just give the software data and they'll be making pie chart for us. So again, it is not very difficult. But when we have categories too much, I think at that time it is would be unusual that we give the pie chart, and we need to think of what kind of presentation would be better under these kinds of circumstances. Bar diagram, again, bar diagram can be used as the substitute for pie chart. These can be used interchangeably also, depending upon which looks better and which gives us the better information. By bar diagram is used for the, again, for the discrete kind of data. The length of bar is proportional to the frequency over here, as the area of the arc was proportional to the frequency in the pie chart. So these can be used interchangeably. Again, we have to see if frequencies are too many, bar diagram again makes some kind of sense, but the pie diagram makes it too much. These are the simple bar diagrams you can have of the many ways forms. These are the simple, what was the frequency of any particular entity at different places, or if we are going for the multiple kind of entities at the same place or in the same time, we can show it in the form of the clustered bar diagrams. As in the 2006, how was the description of the different kinds of the novels or the books the people were reading, and how this has changed over time. We can see it very easily from these clustered bar diagrams. Stacked bar diagrams, this may be once preferred. These clustered bar diagrams again can be substituted with the stack diagram, where length of each colored band is proportional to the frequency. That what is the frequency? But these, for me, these are a bit difficult to understand it in comparison with the stacked bar diagram. You can make it in the form of, if the you can make it to beautify in the form of circular bar plots also, which again can be done very easily with the help of softwares in case you have shortage of space. So that Florence Nightingale also made these kinds of diagrams in the what she called as the polar chart, and these are the famous. And she used this chart to convince her authorities that it is not because of the severity of the infection that people, the soldiers are dying. It is because of the inadequacy of the services at some particular area where the mortality is noted high over the time. So she saved space instead of clustering it over the horizontal or the vertical line. Just organize this in the form of circle, and it was sufficient to convey a meaning. Histogram is again used for the continuous data only, where we can have the frequencies, but the data is continuous. Here it appears discontinuous or the discrete as of 4 to 7 and 8 to 11. There is a gap between, but it is the gap should not be there. And when the gap is there, this is called as the inclusive kind of a histogram, where the figure 7 in the 4 to 7 is included in the first stack between the frequency of 4 to 10. But if it had been 4 to 7 and 7 to 11, then the 7 would have figured in the next category because it is continuous. And so whenever you have a continuous data, prefer histogram over the bar charts and present it like that. You can draw a line or the graph over that in the form of a partogram, which will show that whether the data is normally distributed or not, because it is making a sort of bell-shaped curve. So you may say that it suggests that the distribution is nearly normal, if not completely normal. And how many frequency, how many cells or the how many categories we should have. And you can use this particular formula that K is the number of categories and N is the number of total sample. And on the basis of this particular formula, you can always make that how many categories we can make. So it will look properly comprehensible and it will look a bit scientific also. QQ plot is a kind of the scatter diagram. Before that, I'll be telling you about the scatter chart only. Scatter chart is just is dealing with when we have some kind of bivariate data. We want to show the relationship between two variables. One variable is shown on the x-axis and the other variable is shown on the y-axis, and how the different dots get distributed on the basis of their relationship. It will tell us the correlation, whether there is a positive linear correlation, negative correlation, or no correlation at all. This may be there. And QQ plot is just a sort of modification of the scatter diagram, uh, which is over here. That here we have the distribution pattern, and we make a theoretical distribution also on the basis of our uh, 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 that on the basis of our distribution. And if both theoretical distribution and the distribution which we have follows the straight theoretical line, which is shown here, the black line, then we can say it is normally distributed. Otherwise, this is not uh, normally distributed. And this is how the scatter diagrams can be used. And when we have too many variables, as it is in the genetic studies, we have too many genes, and each gene is having some kind of significance, or it is not having any significance. We can make use of these kinds of the volcano chart, where the change or the magnitude is shown on one particular direction, the x-axis, and the significance is shown on the y-axis. On the basis of that, we can make a sort of comparison that which is more significant and which is less significant. And with the help of softwares, we can also label it. We can identify the particular genes also, and which are of the focus of our interest. And diffusion chart is also giving us the same kind of information, but it is not when we have just two variables, but when we have many variables together. Okay, let's say the 10 or the 20 variables are there, and we are trying to find out the similarity between the variables, and we have tried to reduce the number of dimensions on the basis of that. That, for example, here this particular diagram is shown over here in the form of the red and blue dots. Here it might be having some 20 variables, but these 20 variables have been reduced to the 3 variables, which are shown on the different axes, and we can show the relationship in the form of the diffusion maps. And so many times the diagrams tell us the better meaning, that it shows that those which are clustering as red are together, and the blue are a bit uh, different in the diffusion map. Otherwise, we are getting this kind of figure, or we are getting this kind of chart, which are, of course, difficult to comprehend in comparison with the final diffusion map we have. Box plot is another very useful kind of thing, which tells us about the distribution. And uh, it tells us whether the distribution is normal or not. If median is coinciding with mean, or third quartile, and there are a less number of outliers. Outliers are possible in the normal distributions also, but the number should be less. And so in this way, the box plot also tells us about the normal distributions. And these kinds of box plot or the diffusions or the any other kind of QQ charts will be required as the additional part in the variables, additional parts in the result, so which are required for the purpose of explanation. That when the results are difficult to explain about the main body, then why the results are like that, the distribution patterns or the number of dimensions, these can help us in explaining about this. These can be of the different forms. We can have the notched box plot also, and we can make these box plots in the form of letter value, which is again a modification, but a slightly lucky that it will cover all observations except outliers. And we can have a distribution where it is more or lot less. We can make the beautiful violin plots also. This actually tells that key what are the different, what is the number of frequencies at a particular magnitude. If the things are clustered more around median, that this particular line would be inflated at median, and this will also give us an idea that the whether this particular outer line, that whether the distribution is distributed normally or it is not. And we can have the stacked bar plot and the violin plots also. These look different but difficult, but these are very easy to draw. Forest plot, when we have too many studies, the forest plot give us very easy description to know that which particular results are significant in the studies and which are not significant in the studies. And forest plot are indispensable when we are carrying out a meta-analysis. Meta-analysis usually draws this forest plot, and odds ratio 1 shows that this is not significant, and any value which is crossing this odds ratio or level 1, it is not significant. And for example, or the first value which is over here, this is not significant, and this second is slightly significant, and this particular small is somewhat more significant on the other side. And but all those which are crossed by this blue hyphen line are not significant. So in this way we can make our forest plot. Whenever we are doing a meta-analysis, forest plot is required. And each diagram whichever we draw, just like a table, it is having its own grammar. Let's not miss it. Title is required, legend is required, and what is the meaning of height, that is also required, and what frequencies it is showing, the scale is also required. And it should also be another way that it should be self-explanatory, that we don't need to take help of the particular kind. And these are the some kind of tips when you have too many, when you're showing the some kind of statistical analysis, table is preferred, and when you're just showing magnitude, figures are present. And these we have already discussed, when to prefer histogram, pie charts, is and the importance of QQ plots and the box plots, and dimension reduction. We can have diffusion plots, Swiss roll plots. Plots are a bit complicated, but these look really very beautiful in those also. With this, I come to the end of my presentation, and these are the different tools which you can use for all. R and the R Studio are particularly rich in the type of the diagrams you wish to draw, and more interestingly, these are available free of cost to you. Any questions and the comments? And if there are any questions in the chat box, I would be happy to take up those also. So are there any questions in the chat box?
Yes, sir. There is a one question in the chat box.
Yes, okay. Someone who is identifying as PPS has asked, is there any difference between the observations and the results? And if yes, how should it be mentioned? Observations and the results section in the thesis. Yeah, there is obviously no difference between the observations and the results. These are the same. Only thing is the nomenclature. At some places, people say it observations, and the other places they say it a result. There is really no difference between these two. And depending upon the university or depending upon the guidelines to the authors in a particular journal, you can choose what to write, observations or results.
So if there is any query regarding today's session, you are free to ask. You can unmute yourself. You can write in the chat box. I allowed everyone to unmute at your end.
I think there are.
I think there is no query. Yeah, just open more 30 seconds. If there is any query, you can clarify your doubts here. Otherwise, so we can bind up the session.
Yes, there is one more question which is put to the page. You will give the logic. It is important to analyze. Uh, I'm sorry if you can speak. I could not understand the word logicele uh, in this. If you can speak and clarify your question, Dr. Komge Namglu. Uh,
Dr. Congo, please unmute yourself and clarify your query.
I am having difficulty in understanding the word logicele. I am not familiar with it.
We are unable to hear. Yes, yes.
Mm,
Not getting your voice, Dr. Congo.
So in case logicele, what is the how will you give the logical or the logic for the data analysis? And for this, if the question is like that, then I'll say that the analysis is that in case we are having the data continuous and we are having the data which is normally distributed, and at that time it would be the parametric analysis which will be useful for analyzing the data. But in case we are having that data which is in the form of qualitative or the qualitative data is there, it is in the frequencies and the categories, it is deviating from the normal distribution, then non-parametric tests like chi-square Fisher test or the other kind of the Spearman's row may be used for the purpose of analysis and many other. And for categorical data, figures are also very useful. I am not able to hear Dr. Comge. Doctors, I think there is some problem with voice. I am not able to hear you also, Amit sir.
Yes, yes, I'm now I'm audible, sir.
Yes,
Dr.
you are
Kamgo,
audible.
please, Dr. Kamgo, please send your query, describe your query in chat box, either chat box or send to me to WhatsApp, so I can forward that query to sir, and the sir will reply you soon. Because we are unable to hear you. Your mic is open, but your voice is not coming here. Any other query? So I hope there is no further queries. So thank you so much, sir, for delivering a wonderful session on components of result writing. And I hope all delegates uh, get benefited from today's session. And tomorrow, tomorrow means on Monday, we again meet with new session that is on effective discussion writing. So this is the end of today's session. Thank you so much, sir, again, and thank you all delegates for listening very patiently.
Thank you very much, all. Thank you, Amit sir.
Thank you, everyone. This is the end of today's session. And if any query remaining, you can WhatsApp us, you can message us, so I can forward to sir and reply you as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.